Ancient Wisdom Teachings. The journey begins, entering the Ennead, the sacred origins of the Nine. Welcome, and thank you for joining me for the Ancient Wisdom Teachings. I'm Andrew Guilfoil, and this presentation is called The Journey Begins, Entering the Ennead. This is not yet the lesson of the individual deity, it is the doorway into the sacred pattern of the Nine. Before we meet Atum, Shu, Tefnut, Geb, Nut, Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys, one by one, I want us to understand that the world from which these teachings emerged, the ancient spiritual landscape of Kemet. We will move through history, sacred stories, temple tradition, and spiritual interpretations. At times, we will stand on the firmer ground of inscriptions, archaeology, and documented religious practice. At other times, we will enter the realm of esoteric tradition, symbolic memory, and the contemplative possibility. I want to be clear about the difference because discernment is part of the journey. My purpose is not to tell you what you must believe. No, it is to open a gate through which you may look, listen, question, and perhaps even remember something within yourself. The Ennead can be approached as an ancient theology, a sacred family, a map of creation, and a living pattern of consciousness. So take a breath. Set aside the need to arrive at an immediate conclusion. Let us begin where the ancient teachers began, with the mystery, possibility, and with the one becoming the many. The Great Ennead of Kemet. Here we encounter the Great Ennead of Kemet, the original nine associated especially with Iuna, the sacred city later called Heliopolis by the Greeks. Atum stands at the beginning. From Atum emerge Shu and Tefnut. From Shu and Tefnut come Geb and Nut. From Geb and Nut come Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Together they form a sacred sequence: source, emergence, relationship, embodiment, conflict, restoration, death, and renewal. It is important to remember that the Egyptians did not simply worship nine separate personalities in the way we might imagine nine unrelated gods. These divine presences participate in one unfolding order. They express relationship within creation. Each has a distinct identity, yet each belongs to a larger pattern. The Ennead also was not the only Egyptian account of creation. Different temple centers preserve different theological visions. That does not necessarily mean the traditions were fighting for one exclusive answer. Ancient Kemet could hold several sacred lenses at once, each illuminating a different dimension of the mystery. In this series, we will honor the historical identities of these deities while also listening for their inner meaning. We will ask what happens when Atum becomes a principle of awakened source, when Shu becomes breath and space, when Tefnut becomes sacred flow, and when the remaining presence become gates within our own journey. For now, let's simply receive the pattern of the nine as a whole. From the one came the nine, through the nine the world took form. Before Egypt was Egypt, the primordial mystery. Before the temples, before the dynasties, and even before the divine names were organized into the forms we now recognize, the creation teaching begins with Nun. Nun is often described as the limitless primordial waters. Not an ocean located somewhere on a map, but the unbounded possibility before a formed world. It is silent, formless, and deep. Everything that could exist is present in potential, but nothing has yet taken its defined place. The teaching does not begin with a finished universe. It begins with a mystery. It asks us to imagine a condition before separation, before sky and earth, before light and darkness. We're experienced as opposites. Before identity could say, I am this and not that. Then comes the first movement of awareness. From the waters, the first presence arises. In the Heliopolitan tradition, that presence is a tomb, self-engendered source, the one who contains the possibility of the many. There's also an inner lesson here. Every creation in our own life begins in a kind of nun. Before a word is spoken, before a choice is made, even before new identity is formed, there's a field of possibility. We may experience it as uncertainty or emptiness, yet the ancient symbol invites us to see the emptiness differently. It may be the womb of the becoming. As we continue, I want you to keep this image in your mind, the image of the primordial waters within you, with you. The journey towards consciousness doesn't always begin with certainty. Sometimes it begins by becoming quiet enough for us to actually feel what's waiting beneath our surface. And I often view these waters as the waters of creative consciousness, of the potentiality of creation. As we move on, we come to the memory before history. Many spiritual traditions speak of a lost age, a time when wisdom was understood more directly, before catastrophe, fragmentation, or forgetfulness. In modern esoteric teachings, the lost age is often given the name Atlantis. What is Atlantis? Some receive it as a literal ancient civilization. Others understand it as a spiritual memory, or an archetype, or a symbol of a forgotten age. Historical and archaeological evidence has not yet confirmed that Atlantis described in the later esoteric accounts, and I do not present it here as a settled fact. Yet the story remains spiritually powerful. Across cultures, we find memories of floods, vanished people, sacred knowledge preserved through disaster, and teachers who carry fragments of wisdom into a new world. Similar stories do not automatically prove one original civilization, but they do, however, reveal a reoccurring human concern. Knowledge can be lost, and wisdom must be protected. Within the spiritual interpretations explored in this series, Kemet may be contemplated as a vessel, a civilization in which very ancient ideas were encoded through sacred story, temple practice, image, numbers, and ritual. Whether one reads the lost age tradition literally or symbolically, its central question remains the same. What survives when a world changes? Perhaps facts are not the only things a people preserve. A myth may carry an ethical pattern. A symbol may hold several layers of teaching. A ritual may protect an experience the ordinary language cannot fully contain. So I invite you to accept nor reject the lost age tradition too quickly. Hold it with discernment. Let it open a question rather than close one. Give yourself the opportunity to breathe as we look at the symbology and the complex ideas that have come forward and survived for thousands and thousands of years. Let's now look at Thoth, keeper of the sacred knowledge. In ancient Kemet, Jehuti, later called Thoth, he was associated with wisdom, writing, measurement, sacred speech, order, and the reckoning of time. He appears as a divine scribe, a keeper of knowledge, and a presence through whom thought and language become ordered. The ancient Egyptians figure This ancient Egyptian figure is historically documented in inscriptions, temple traditions, and religious texts. But a second image of Thoth developed much later in the Hermetic and esoteric traditions. In those teachings, Thoth may appear as an Atlantean master, a bearer of primordial wisdom, or a teacher who carries sacred knowledge across ages. The two traditions overlap, but they are not identical. One belongs to ancient Egyptian religion, as we can study it through the surviving evidence. The other belongs to a later spiritual stream that interprets Thoth as the enduring archetype of hidden teacher. Distinguishing them does not require us to stop either one of meaning. It simply helps us to understand what kind of teaching we are receiving. For me, Thoth represents the responsibility that accompanies knowledge. I'll say that again. It represents the responsibility that accompanies knowledge. Wisdom is not merely collected. It must be measured, tested, preserved, translated, and used in the service to balance. Sacred speech is not powerful because it is mysterious. It's powerful because words can bring thought into form. This is why the image of the scribe matters. The scribe listens before writing. The scribe observes relationship, proportion, and consequence. The true keeper of knowledge does not use mystery to escape discernment. The keeper protects the teaching by approaching it honestly. And as we move into the discussion of the Emerald teachings, this distinction will become especially important. The Emerald Tablet and Emerald Tablets. The words Emerald Tablet and Emerald Tablets are frequently used as though they describe the same ancient artifact. They do not. The singular Emerald Tablet refers to a short Hermetic text known through medieval manuscript traditions, including Arabic sources and later Latin versions. It became especially influential in the Western alchemy and the Hermetic philosophy. The phrase most associated with it is the principle commonly surmised as above, so below. The plural Emerald Tablets of Thoth refers to a much later esoteric work published in the 20th century and associated with Maurice Durreau. It presents itself in the voice of an ancient teacher and carries themes of Atlantis, initiation, hidden knowledge, and inner transformation. No authenticated ancient set of Emerald Tablets corresponding to these claims has been archaeologically verified. That point does matter. We should not teach a modern spiritual text as though archaeologists recovered it from ancient Egyptian temple. At the same time, distinguishing a text's origin does not automatically determine whether it is spiritual value. A medieval Hermetic text may be profound. A 20th century esoteric work may inspire contemplation, but we serve the teaching when we name the tradition honestly. This creates a useful practice for everything we will study. Ask what kind of source is before us. Is it an ancient inscription, a later manuscript, a modern revelation, a symbolic interpretation, a personal spiritual experience? Each may contribute something, but they do not carry the same kind of historical evidence. The question then is not merely how old is this text? The deeper question is, what does it awaken within us, and how responsibly are we receiving it? The age of claim and the depth of the teaching are related questions, but they are not the same question. So I want to come to the oral traditions to the great libraries, when memory becomes writing or became writing. Before writing, knowledge lived through memory, ritual, repetition, apprenticeship, and sacred instruction. The survival of teaching depended upon people, elders, priests, healers, initiates, craftspeople, and communities willing to carry the message forward. By the late 4th millennium BCE, writing systems were emerging in both Mesopotamia and Egypt. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform was impressed primarily into clay tablets. In Kemet, hieroglyphic writings appeared in royal, ritual, administrative, and sacred settings. These developments occurred within the same broad ancient horizon. Although scholars continue to examine the precise relationship between them, both civilizations preserve creation stories, divine order, kingship, and the human relationship to the sacred, and the struggle to maintain life against chaos. The parallels invite thoughtful comparison. They do not, by themselves, prove one simple line of descent from the culture into the other, or from one culture to the other. The Egyptian Ennead became visible through text and images preserved across many centuries. Yet it would be inaccurate to say that the nine appear in every hieroglyphic inscription. Hieroglyphs served as many purposes, and Egyptian religion contained many local traditions. What survives gives us fragments, precious fragments, but fragments nonetheless. Much later in the Ptolemaic era, Alexandria became a meeting place for Egyptian, Greek, Mediterranean, and Near Eastern learning. We often speak of the Library of Alexandria as being destroyed in one great fire. Its decline was more complicated. Collections were damaged, reduced, relocated, and dispersed through multiple events over time. A larger lesson is that no library can preserve everything. Writing saves memory, but writing also survives selectivity. Symbols protect layers, myths carry meanings when ordinary records disappear. Our work is to receive the fragments without pretending that the missing pieces are certain. From sacred memory to temple tradition, Kemet held more than one creation theology. Different sacred centers express the beginning through different divine patterns, each shaped by its own temple tradition. At Iuna, later called Heliopolis, creation unfolds through Atum and the great Ennead. This is the stream at the heart of our present journey. One emerges, differentiation begins, and the relationships among the nine become a sacred map of the created world. At Khanum, later called Hermeopolis, Hermeopolis, the mystery was expressed through the Ogdad, 8 primordial powers, often arranged in male and female pairs, associated with conditions such as darkness, hiddenness, boundlessness, and the primeval waters before creation. At Nineveh, known as Memphis, Ptah occupies the creative center in the Memphite theological vision. Creation takes form through the heart and tongue, through divine conception and authoritative speech. Thought becomes word, word becomes ordered reality. These accounts may sound different to modern listener, accustomed to seeking one exclusive explanation, but sacred traditions often speak through complementary images. Water, emergence, breath, thought, word, earth, sky, and divine relationship can all reveal different aspects of a beginning. Temple communities did more than preserve stories. They maintained calendars, ritual practices, medical and astronomical knowledge, sacred images, ethical order, and the relationship between the human community and the Ma'at, balance, truth, justice, and right relationship. Our focus on the Anun does not make the other traditions less important. It simply gives us one gateway through which we choose to travel deeply. Within the Heliopolitan stream, the nine became a living map of creation, relationship, kingship, death, disruption, restoration, and renewal. The temples preserved the pattern. The people lived its meaning. And now we ask that pattern may speak to consciousness today. The Ennead as a living map. We have now traveled from the primordial mystery through sacred memory and writing into temple tradition of Iuna. Here, the historical doorway opens into contemplation. In this series, I approach the nine as divine powers, sacred relationships, and archetypal movements of consciousness. They are contemplative interpretations inspired by ancient tradition. It's not intended to replace the historical meanings of the deities or to claim that every ancient Egyptian would have described them in these exact terms. Atum is source, the awakened presence from which differentiation becomes possible. Shu is breath, air, space, and the room in which life can move. Tefnut is sacred flow, moisture, balance, and the intelligence of circulation. Geb is embodiment, the living groundedness of the physical existence. Nut is the infinite awareness, the star-filled expanse that holds and surrounds life. Osiris being renewal, the mystery through which life may continue beyond fragmentation and death. Isis is restoration, sacred wisdom, devotion, and the power to gather what has been broken. Set being transformation, disruption, force, conflict, and the difficult energy that prevents spiritual life from becoming passive. Nephthys is the threshold, protection, hidden depth, mourning, transition, and companionship at the edge between worlds. These are not 9 isolated lessons. Each presence exists in relationship. Breath needs flow. Earth needs sky. Renewal follows rupture. Restoration requires that we acknowledge what has been broken. The threshold asks us to release one condition before entering another. Creation, then, is not only an event in a distant past, it is a pattern continually unfolding within life and within us. Every time awareness gives birth to new possibilities, every new time we have a new relationship, that creates new form. Every time disruption becomes transformation, the pattern lives again. Each presence becomes a gate, and each gate becomes a lesson. In our next chapter, we begin where creation begins, with Atum, the one who becomes the many. And as we're viewing the slide, it's just a reminder that in this whole cycle, in order to maintain life and to be living, there is breath. From breath, we have source, the sacred flow being the emotion, the water, the groundedness, the embodiment of the life that we here are experiencing in the physical plane. The infinite awareness which is within us, which is the awakening to our higher consciousness and to the oneness of self. Renewal comes from changes or transformations. Transformations are often painful. Restoration is that allowing ourselves to heal and transform. And then there are the thresholds. I'd like you to join me for a moment of reflection. As we close this introduction, I want to remind you that these teachings are expressions of my own awareness, experience, study, and spiritual understandings. I do not offer them as final answers. I offer them as an invitation for reflection, remembrance, deeper questioning, and the awakening of your own inner knowing. Some ideas may resonate immediately, others may challenge you or may not belong to your path at all. Receive what resonates, question what doesn't, continue to study, and honor the truth that is unfolding within you. The purpose of higher consciousness is not to replace one rigid belief with another. It is to become more awake, more discerning, more honest, more capable of living in right relationship with ourselves, with one another, and with the sacred mystery of life. I thank you for walking through this first gateway with me. I hope this presentation has given you a foundation for the journey ahead and a clearer sense of how history, sacred story, spiritual interpretations can be held together without confusing one for the other. Our next meeting begins with Atum, the first presence, the complete one, and the mystery through which unity becomes multiplicity. Until we meet again, may you walk in wisdom, truth, and remembrance, love and light, with gratitude. This is Andrew Guilfoil.